From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
From the tree to your dipping bowl.
The demand for domestic avocados is extremely high.
See what it takes to harvest avocados in California. The war on a different front as Ukraine takes action against what it says are efforts to steal its grain. As the market digests new supply-demand numbers from USDA.
Big surprise is the raised feed usage in both categories.
With a little surprise when it comes to old crop corn. Right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. After a rough start, corn ended last week mostly on the upside. It follows the release of the latest supply demand report from USDA, which showed some of that old crop corn is finally getting shipped out. Now let's start first with those ending stocks. USDA pegging old crop corn at 1.87 billion bushels, down 145 million bushels. New crop would be more than 2 billion bushels. For soybeans, 345 million bushels still in old crop, down 5 million from last month, while new crop is projected at 435 million, down 20 million from a month ago. Updating new crop production, USDA making no changes yet to predicted yields for corn and soybeans. We could see that next month when surveys are completed, but it did raise corn production to more than 15 billion bushels while lowering soybean production slightly to 4.43 billion bushels. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me now with a closer look at these numbers.
USDA threw a bullish surprise at the corn market by offsetting increased production with much higher demand. This resulted in a huge drop in old crop carryover, and new crop ending stocks came in more than 200 million bushels below estimates. Meanwhile, the report was slightly friendly for soybeans, but bearish for wheat.
After USDA found more old crop corn than expected in the quarterly stocks report and another 1.4 million planted acres, there were bearish expectations for this WASDE. However, USDA ended up lowering old crop ending stocks by 145 million bushels and subsequently new crop carryover by 34 million bushels, which was well below estimates. Market analysts say while USDA increased production by 240 million bushels, they also raised demand.
Offsetting it was an increase in exports for old crop and projected new crop. And the big surprise is the raised feed usage in both categories. So the net effect is the carryout dropped for the old crop year, and the new crop year is actually dipped down as well when we were bracing in the trade as a trade for a slight uptick by a couple hundred million. So definitely a bullish surprise.
He says this should stop the bleeding in the corn market for now, but he says the question will be whether or not USDA's aggressive demand projections can hold. USDA left yields unchanged for corn and soybeans, but for beans, with a 400,000 acre drop in planted acreage, production was lowered by 15 million bushels. Ending stocks were also lowered by 20 million bushels to 435 million.
Nothing ragingly bullish. I'd call it slightly friendly. The big question for the beans still going to be the demand aspect, just like in the corn. The demand is roughly 125 million, I believe, bushels above year on year. That's export demand year on year. But if you look like sales for new crop are horrendously bad, to put it bluntly.
Wheat saw the most bearish numbers with 134 million bushel increase in production due to higher yield and harvested acreage. Exports were raised 25 million bushels, but ending stocks were still nearly 100 million bushels higher for new crop at 856 million.
Crop got a little bit bigger. That doesn't surprise us. Overall, the wheat yields have been really, really impressive. As you mentioned, even in South Dakota, you're talking about 100 bushel wheat. I think there is unfortunately a chance, Michelle, that when we get another revision a month from now in August, this wheat crop will continue to get a little bit bigger.
Meanwhile, USDA made only slight adjustments to South American production. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Now, quite the scene in Vermont with more than 100 people and their animals needing rescue after the remnants of Tropical Storm Beryl drenched the state. In one case, neighbors came together to rescue 20 head of cattle trapped in floodwaters when the La Platte River went beyond its banks. According to the National Weather Service, the region received its monthly rainfall amounts for all of July in just one day last week. The Vermont Secretary of Transportation says the high water forced the state to close dozens of roads, 3 bridges were destroyed, a feed store in Barnett, Vermont lost power.
Feed's got to roll out here every day or animals are going to go hungry, so we have really no choice but to get power back.
Thanks to a big effort by locals, crews removed rocks from a washed out road, and the power crew was able to get in and restore electricity so feed could be mixed for thousands of animals. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us, and Matt, is quieter weather on the way this week?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, we cover kind of that national perspective. It'll be quiet for some and active for others. And I want to start off looking at the temperature outlook map because that kind of will tell you where that active pattern is going to be setting up and where that quiet pattern will continue to hold. The blue is something we haven't seen too much of the last couple of weeks, is below normal conditions in and across parts of the Midwest, Missouri, and off here to the East Coast. What this is signaling is a pocket of cooler air within the jet stream. As we've talked about before, the saddle point between that trough and this ridge back out here to the west is going to be the focus of some showers and thunderstorms. Not widespread, but enough energy is going to be working through the Midwest over the course of the 19th to the 25th. Then we're going to get a couple rounds of some showers, perhaps even some severe weather. That being said, that pocket of cooler air will help keep a lot of the heat, extreme heat, back down here to the south, but not completely void on the map. Otherwise, the Northwest continues to bake. And wow, here's a great way to start your day, sharing this spectacular sunrise in horse country. Claiborne Farm is doing that in Paris, Kentucky. Beautiful. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Increasing rainfall is helping improve conditions at the Panama Canal. The shipping thoroughfare expected to return to more normal traffic levels later this summer. The rain helping alleviate the severe drought, which forced a reduction in the number of ships capable of passing through the locks. The Canal Authority says daily bookings are up to 35 from 24 imposed last November. Now, La Nina is expected to keep rains falling through the summer. The situation in Ukraine continues to escalate. Ukraine announcing it has seized a ship accused of selling looted grain. The Security Service of Ukraine saying it seized a foreign cargo ship in the Black Sea on suspicion of helping Moscow export Ukrainian grain from the Crimea region. The vessel was traveling under the flag of a Central African country. Officials report it docked repeatedly at the Crimean seaport of Sevastopol in 2023 and 2024, adding that the captain and crew helped Russia export the grain taken from occupied South to the Middle East and sold it on behalf of Russia. Now, this is not the first time there have been accusations of Russia stealing grain. In 2022, the Wall Street Journal investigated a sophisticated system of feeder vessels and floating cranes used to smuggle grain, typically from Sevastopol, to larger cargo ships waiting at sea, claiming Russia's largest grain trader shipped thousands of tons of stolen Ukrainian grain to global buyers. It was a mixed day for markets following USDA's latest supply and demand report. Michelle Rook joins us once again to sort out the winners and losers next. And later, we're off to the Golden State where growers are in the green. It's avocado harvest season today in the country. A new study says U.S. oilseed production already exceeds the EPA's existing renewable fuel standard renewable volume obligations. That study, commissioned by the National Oilseed Processors Association, it points to a 30% increase in U.S. oilseed crush capacity, a $6 billion investment that has enabled U.S. oilseed processors to produce enough feedstocks to support a 1.4 billion gallon increase in the RFS for biofuels. The report says last year, domestic and imported feedstocks supported the production of 4.3 billion gallons of renewable diesel and biodiesel. The study conducted by S&P Global Commodity Insights also says the U.S. oilseed sector is more than capable of meeting and exceeding demand for food, feed, and fuel well into the next decade. Ag company CHS releasing third quarter earnings last week, and it's reporting lower revenue due to weaker commodity prices. The company reporting quarterly net income of just over $297 million and revenues of $9.6 billion for the first 9 months of the year, the company reported net income of more than $990 million and revenues of $30.1 billion. Now that's compared to record net income of $1.6 billion last year, along with record revenues of more than $36 billion. CHS says weaker grain and oilseed demand led to the earnings decline, along with more challenging market conditions. Corn continued to move above $4 on Friday after the release of the latest supply and demand report. AgDay's Michelle Rook lets us know if traders think the momentum can continue this week in markets now.
Mixed closes on Friday in the grains after the WSDA report. Arlen Suderman with StoneX is with us with analysis. And wow, a bullish surprise on the corn. Instead of going up on ending stocks, we actually went down more than the trade had expected, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of creative accounting, shall we say. And I'll say it looked like they were trying to solve for a desired solution of keeping new crop stocks below 2.1 billion bushels. We had that bearish report on June 28th, which saw stocks come in higher than expected and acreage come in higher than expected. So the acreage they factored in, there's no way around that. That means a bigger crop. They weren't going to change the yield in this report. So you're dealing with a big crop. What do you do with those extra supplies? The stocks report was already bigger than expected with reflecting higher supplies. So what do you do with it? That means that one of two things happen or some combination. That means that either the last year's crop was understated and it was bigger than what's been reported, or that feed usage is less than what's been reported. Now, feed usage has been good. And if you look at where the stocks were in that June 28th report, they really were not in the areas where we've been feeding livestock. So feed usage has been good, and you can probably justify this, but you still have to make the accounting work. So USDA increased feed usage rather than taking it down, increasing by 75 million bushels for both this year and for next year, along with increasing exports.
So Arlen, does this stop the bleeding in the corn market? Does it get the funds to start covering shorts or not?
I don't think it really does at this point. It doesn't mean we have to go lower, but the funds know that the farmer's the big long, holding big positions, probably has close to 3 billion bushels he has to move off the farm before this next harvest, unless the crop really takes a turn to the south. And the funds know that, so they're not really worried about holding on to short positions unless a legitimate weather problem develops.
And the other surprise, Arlen, was higher wheat production. You know, does this keep the funds pushing that short side of that market?
Yeah, it really keeps the story going of crops outperforming in adverse weather. It's going to be hard to convince the marketplace that adverse weather is going to hurt production of any crop with our recent history.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Arlen Suderman with StoneX. So we'll have more AgDay coming up.
So we looked at the temperature outlook. Here's the precipitation outlook from the 17th to the 21st. And once again, we're starting to see that trough-ridge relationship play out. Expecting slightly wetter than normal conditions on the East Coast. That has to do with kind of a weak low-pressure system swinging some moisture into North Carolina and Virginia, where, as we've seen the last couple of days, it has been wet. That trend continuing through about the 21st. Drier back up here to the north, but that saddle point, just love using that term, between the dry and also the wet. It's right in between that we're going to lay some tracks down and force some stronger thunderstorms to come through. What this map isn't showing and what I'm not seeing in the data is anything that would support a large low pressure system that would give us widespread showers and downpours across the United States. These are rather scattered, if not isolated, in and across the United States. So here's a look at the jet stream. As we go through the weekend, or as we've gone through the weekend into your Monday and Tuesday, I want to start you on Saturday, this past Saturday, work you up through your Monday and Tuesday so you can kind of see how that jet stream is expected to evolve over the next couple of days and next week. So there's on Tuesday, there's this weak trough coming through. Attached to that will be a cold front. This time of year, they're typically pretty weak. I'm not expecting temperatures to fall 30 degrees behind this cold front, but it is enough to spark showers, thunderstorms, perhaps some severe weather where this trough digs. How far south it goes is how far south that cooler, drier air will go. But here's a look at Thursday. You got this ridge of high pressure, strong ridge developing out here to the west with this trough matched up into the northeast. Between the two, they start to fill this in with the potential for some widely scattered showers and thunderstorms. So if this circle was over here, we'd be talking about a very quiet weather pattern for both Iowa, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. But we're kind of sitting right in that zone where we could have some of those showers, thunderstorms come down from the northwest down to the southeast. Now that's on Thursday. As you go into Friday and Saturday next week, this isn't going anywhere. This will start to set up a quieter pattern across the United States for a few days. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before the top left corner of your screen, before the next piece of energy tries to drop through the United States. Greeley, Colorado, you got some evening thunderstorms, high of 97 degrees. Douglas, Georgia, partly cloudy, high of 94, low of 75. How about West Virginia, Vienna, not the sausage, the city, 93 degrees, low of 72.
Well, things are about to get heavy with Machinery Pete. I'll explain next. And later, we stop by avocado harvest in California as the fruit comes off the tree today in the country. Machinery Pete has something pretty heavy to talk about with us this morning, heavy equipment that is, and he says there are some hot items in that group as well.
Well, I'm on the road this week, folks. I'm in Canastota, New York. We're out here filming a special episode for Machinery Pete TV covering a very large construction equipment auction by Alex Lyon & Son, one of the world's largest construction firms, actually the largest family-owned auction company in the world. And yesterday we were interviewing auctioneer legend Jack Lyon about the current trends in the heavy equipment industry, and I asked Jack what are some of the hottest sectors of the heavy equipment market the past year or so. And without missing a beat, my friend Jack said, well, Pete, you got wheel loaders and you got mini excavators. And that made me smile because our Machinery Pete auction data is showing the exact same trend. Now on the auction, which is Saturday, 2 days before when you're watching this new unused Bobcat E85 is on the sale. It's going to be really interesting. Now, the last 18 months, the highest auction price I've seen on a Bobcat E85 was $87,000 on a sale May 6, 23 in Worcester, Ohio, 19 model, 1,367 hours. Now, if you talk just in 2024, the highest auction price I've seen on a mid to mini excavator is actually a Kubota, and it was the sale was April 13th of 2024 in Freedom, Pennsylvania. A Kubota U55.5 with only 7 hours went for $77,000.
All right, thanks, Pete. Well, there's not a lot of heavy equipment required to harvest avocados. As much of it is hand-picked. We're off to California for harvest next. The U.S. produces an average of about 400 million pounds of avocados each year, and most of those are grown in California. It's a hardy crop and one that's hand-picked, as Farm Journal's Tyne Morgan shows us.
A trip to sunny Corona, California, just outside of Palm Springs, and you'll quickly discover harvesting avocados is a special feat.
So I'll go as high as the machine goes and, bring the trees down and get the fruit. It goes into my chute.
It's not an army of people who harvests this avocado grove each year. There's only one. Jackie, who you see here, harvests 90 to 95% of all the avocados in this grove each year.
It has a pole saw, which I do all my pruning.
Unlike other perishable crops, avocados are a hardy fruit with a longer shelf life.
I think something cool about avocados is that you can leave them on the tree. Like some other crops, they require hard pick dates, say corn. Where I think something that's really cool about avocados is the perfect incubator is the tree itself.
John Dimitri is the Vice President of Business Development here at Index Fresh. He says growers can leave the avocado crop on the tree for an extended amount of time in order to watch the fruit size up.
Avocados are just a naturally dense, protective piece of fruit that continue to win people over year after year. And so I think, in terms of how avocados are grown, how they're harvested, they're very labor intensive, and it's just amazing, as you saw Jackie today doing some harvesting, the passion that people have for avocados.
Dimitri says the crop this year looks good as harvest will run through August, and production outlooks beyond even the U.S. are also promising.
Imports are something that I think earlier on years ago we're a little fearful of, but actually, you know, having more fruit available has really increased household penetration, because earlier, you know, when California avocados had their crop, a lot of that fruit never really went too far east, or if it did, you know, it was in very small volumes.
Packed with fiber, vitamins, and healthy fats, the growing demand is now a bright spot for California ag.
A lot of hard work for sure. Thanks, Tyne, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.